This will be my Outlander Season 7, Episode 12 review titled Carnal Knowledge. As always, I am a book reader, so if you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the TV show, please do keep on scrolling. So this episode was very true to the books. Almost all of the dialogue was taken directly out of the books, with a few minor tweaks here and there. So as always, the purpose of all of my review videos is to give you my initial thoughts on the episode, but also contrast it to some changes that the show might have taken with the writing. In this opening scene, we pick up with Jamie and Lord John immediately after the events of episode 11, where Jamie and Lord John are leaving Lord John's home and fleeing from the British Army. Now, you'll notice multiple times as they're walking through the city that Jamie is holding on to Lord John, and he kind of flees his arm away as if to tell him, I'm voluntarily coming with you. I know you kidnapped me out of my own home, but I am coming with you without you having to drag me there. And the scene sort of works as an info dump for the viewer. So he is asking Jamie, just like he does in the books, why are you being followed by the British? What did you do? And this is where there's a slight deviation from the book story. Jamie explains to Lord John that when he entered the city, there were people checking papers. And while his papers checked out, he does have something on his person that he'd rather the British not get their hands on and see. He also doesn't want to give that information to John voluntarily. Now, in the books, the letter that he has, he actually gets from Fergus and Marsley. He goes to their print shop in Philadelphia first, and that is where he gets this paperwork from this letter from Fergus, who has been working for the Continentals, as we know he likes to do, and Jamie ends up passing that along for him on his behalf. Now, the British at this point are already suspicious of Fergus's print shop. He prints a pamphlet called The Onion there, and there's a lot of interest in what's coming in and out of his print shop already. So Jamie leaving there, they're suspicious of him for that reason. As they're walking through, you'll probably notice that John kind of grabs himself like this. In the books, in the scene, it's kind of raining at this point in time and he is cold, and Jamie does in the show as well give him his coat to wear, which is, again, some people were thinking that Jamie was already angry with John at this point, and he is definitely not. So just want to remind you of that as we go through this. Lord John says, "Why would you come to my home if you're being followed by the British?" And Jamie explains to him, obviously, it was to see Claire. And this is another deviation from the books. He explains that he heard about the ship that he was supposed to come over on sinking and wanted to tell Claire because he knew she would be worried. In the books, he finds this out that he finds out that John and Claire were married from Fergus and Marsley. So again, because they are not part of this season, they're tweaking the storyline a little bit. Minor things, but obviously because Fergus and Marsley are not taking part in the events of season 7 as it stands, that has repercussions down the road of how they're going to have to rework other plot points as well. This is also the point at which Jamie says to Lord John, "You're going to have to tell people that I took you against your will if we are to get caught." And Lord John agrees with him at this point. In the books, Jamie says, "You will come with me or I will shoot you if you try to escape before we flee the city." And as Lord John is well aware, he means that, so he agrees. But I also just think he looked so handsome in this scene, as always. So by the time they reach the outskirts of the city, this is when Jamie takes the time to thank Lord John for taking care of Claire in his absence. And there's a lot more time in the books that we get inside of Lord John's head leading up to and during this moment. And he's had a flood of things going through his brain as they left his home until now. And Claire and her well-being is one of them, but also the knowledge that he has to tell Jamie about what happened at this point. Now, I touched upon this in my video previewing the episode, but Lord John, we get a lot more time leading up to the scene while they are escaping the city, and also during the scene inside his head. So we can see at this moment in time that he's been thinking about what he's going to say to Jamie pretty much the entire time they've been fleeing. And that is because he knows that Claire, first of all, would not keep something from Jamie, and also cannot lie because she has a glass face. So he knows that the information about what happened between them is going to get to Jamie one way or another. So while Jamie is thanking him and carrying on business as usual, John has these nauseating thoughts going through his brain, and you can tell that he's handling it perfectly in the scene because he just feels physically ill knowing that he has to tell Jamie the truth. And that is because he knows that Jamie is going to be furious and means what he says. So if he's threatening his life already without knowing this information, what's going to happen when he does know the information? So Lord John at this point is kind of mulling over all the different ways Jamie might take him out, basically. So he takes his liquid courage and Jamie points out to him, "You don't look well. Are you okay?" At which point he reveals the title of the episode, "I have had carnal knowledge of your wife." Now this is actually a preview of the next book. So at the end of An Echo in the Bone, there's a few chapters previewing Written in My Own Heart's Blood, and this was the one that we ended on in An Echo in the Bone. So definitely a cliffhanger, and in the books it ends with Jamie saying, "Oh, why?" And then, we have to wait until the next book came out or to start reading the next book. So this is meant to showcase that Jamie still doesn't fully believe that this is a true statement, but also the way that it's meant to come across to him. He almost thinks it's like a joke to him. And as he remains aloof, you can kind of see just from his facial expression here, Lord John continues to get more and more angry because it's not seeming to get through to Jamie just how much the news of his death affected both Lord John and Claire. And I think this was perfectly acted because Lord John in the books, again, this is the difference between the two mediums where the show has to show you things, and the benefit of the books is that you can spend a long period of time inside the mind of a character simultaneously while reading action. So Lord John in the books, we get a lot more insight into how he feels during these conversations that obviously David Barry does a great job displaying that with his facial expressions and his body. But it's not the same as reading the passage from his POV. And for him, he almost can tell that as he reveals more and more, first of all, I interpreted it as a very cathartic thing for him to say because both him and Claire were angry, and we knew that at the end of the episode, but also because he feels so strongly towards Jamie and he knows him so well that he really is almost sacrificing himself here, and I'll explain why. As he reveals more information to Jamie, Jamie's demeanor starts to shift, and his eyes, I think Sam does a great job with this, his eyes start to hint at him believing more of what John has to say as he questions him, and John kind of reiterates his points to Jamie. And in the books, John explains that this information is going to come out and it's going to anger Jamie, and Jamie angry can be very explosive, and he doesn't really know what he's doing almost. He's so angry and he takes it out almost as a gut instinct. And if Claire were to be the one that tells Jamie this information first, he doesn't know what he would do or say to Claire. So Lord John in the books, like I said, almost sacrifices himself by choosing to be the one who tells the information to Jamie first because he doesn't know how explosive this knowledge is going to be for Jamie, and he'd rather him take it out on him, John, than on Claire. It's also interesting in the books because as he starts to see Jamie's anger rise, he almost sort of dares himself to go there and hit him with some low blow commentary, knowing the outcome is not going to be a great one for him, which is how we go from Jamie looking like this, very aloof, to this instantly. And when Lord John says the low blow that he knows will land, which is that we were both making love to you, that is when Jamie immediately has his reaction and punches Lord John for the first time. Now, I'll touch on this again in a later part when he's talking to Claire, but the reason this has such gravity for Jamie is because in the books we know it instantly brings him back to Wentworth Prison. All of those emotions come flooding back, and he's so angered by this, even though it's from Lord John, that he goes into this intense rage, and this is exactly what Lord John was protecting Claire from at the time. So I'm out of time for part 1. Come back for part 2, and we'll continue breaking down the episode.